Hey everybody, welcome back. This is Jason with this week's Star Report here at New Dimensions and the Galactic Classroom. And as this week progresses, from Wednesday to Wednesday is when you start to see me. This week is going to continue to have the energies of Pluto. And if you remember, you've been watching the Star Report over these last couple of weeks. I believe it's almost 3 weeks ago now. The return of Pluto to the same spot in the solar system that it was in 1776 for the Declaration of Independence here in the United States, and all that's had tied around it, the claims of freedom, the claims of the right of the individual, a country that was going to be about the citizen and not the government, was all really important. And then we saw, of course, the revolutions and the outbreak of conflict take place over the last week, and all of the diversions from outside ourselves that start to claim our attention of war, of economic hardship, of conflict at a global scale almost. And it's very simple to sort of get caught up in what does Pluto mean for the entire planet, instead of being inwardly focused on what it means to build ourselves, right? And so if you're watching a Star Report, you're probably really interested in how can I be working on myself for the greater good of not only myself, but my family, and then how can that contribute as a sovereign being to the whole. And so the Star Report this week is pretty mellow, but it's going to help you sort of focus and look at the energies that are happening so that you can move into this next week in claiming that sovereignty, even if you happen to be diverted. And it's not bad to be diverted or paying attention to global things. A lot of times it's even couched as it's a greater good, or you're a good person for sending charity, sending help, sending prayers, sending good energies to places that you can't actually locate yourself in, and that you understand or you empathize in some small part with the plight of people around the world. And so that may have even been entrenched in a lot of your spirituality that you've started with, right? Jesus' teaching of love your neighbor as yourself was very important. But the caveat to that is love your neighbor as yourself. The first commandment is to love yourself, right? And to love yourself is to claim your own sovereignty, right? When you are a separate being worthy of love, affection, and you're a divine eternal soul that's never going to die, then you must activate that self, that inner self, that higher self, that expanded consciousness that we're all trying to reach. And so this week is going to give us a little bit of power and push to do that. The Pluto return is still funding and or fueling that energy. But this week, tomorrow, Thursday, is March the 11th. And so that day is a master energy day, right? And so this past week, there was a lot of energy of how do I move? How do I act? What should I be doing? How can I contribute to this change that's happening on the surface of the planet? And you might be even feeling a little unbalanced. And so this last week in our meditation Sundays at 7 here at New Dimensions, we focused on you can't really move or change directions if you're not centered or fully balanced, right? And so this master day that's happening on Thursday this week is going to help you find some silence, find some center, and then get that balance, right? Get your feet under you, as it were. And all of this information, all of this spiritual energy that you're starting to experience of who you can be and what you can be in this place and this now can be balanced out, right? So you might want to find over the next day and a half some time to find some silence and just sort of get centered. If you're looking about, well, how do I do that? You could easily go outside and ground yourself. It's going to be a little cool here in the South for most of us, but you can go outside, you can do grounding, you sit under a tree. That happens to be, maybe you're too grounded. Maybe you're so calm and so centered that you can't act. Maybe you need to sun gaze. Maybe you need to do a little brisk walking. Maybe you need to do some meditations about opening the crown chakra, right? Balance is about finding your balance of connection to heaven and to earth, and also inside and outside, right? So if you're spending too much time watching what's happening on the outside of the world instead of what's happening on the inside of your heart, then maybe that's the way you find balance. And then over the next week, when we get into next week, starting Sunday, it's going to be the 11th week of the year. And so that's going to be a whole entire week, which you can start to push forward and act on these things that you're thinking are really at the core of what you're trying to create for your life. And as you're doing that, you're probably noticing that there's a little bit less energy. It's almost like there's been a vacuum over this last week, and that is due to the sun. The sun has quieted down, right? The sunspots haven't been erupting, right? So we haven't had these shocks of energy to denote that we're making progress. And then also the coronal holes have sort of turned away from Earth facing, so we don't even have the pressure or the buildup of the sun fueling us. So this week might not have a whole lot of major things in it, but the major thing would be to find your center and use the master day of Thursday, March 11th, and then next week beginning Sunday, the 11th week of the year, to sort of push into that master energy, right? So 11 is a master number, and when you can claim that energy, it's like everybody always sees 1111 and realizes it's a synchronicity, right? There's a synchronicity that you were able to claim for yourself this week, starting tomorrow, and then into next week, you can find that center. And so I hope that you find the time to focus on yourself, to release any feelings of guilt that you might have for focusing on yourself in the midst of so much change, in the midst of so many other things you could be doing or focusing on. It is good and right to focus on yourself. And then just at the core of why you want to do that, what you're going to contribute by focusing on yourself is there is a unified consciousness, right? And that unified consciousness is usually guided by what we're all seeing, right? It used to be back in the 70s and 80s, we would all watch the same TV show. We would all watch 2 or 3 news channels. And so we would have a unified story to talk about when we went to work, when we went to school, when we went to our religious organizations, whether that be church or mosque or temple. And all of those things united us as a unity consciousness, right? It was a narrative that was given to us and we interacted with this. And we see where that's gotten us, right? Over the last 40 years, where are we? We're having the same issues going along because we haven't done the inner work, the inner development. We haven't claimed for ourselves our own sovereignty. So by focusing on yourself this week and claiming that centeredness, that balance, that energy of the 11s, or the 1111, if it makes you happier to say it that way, the energy of the 11s, what you're doing is that energy that you are is contributing or broadcasting instead of receiving. You're broadcasting that centeredness, that love of self, right? And if you love yourself, if you truly understand and love yourself, then all of these problems in the world, and this sounds altruistic, but all these problems and issues in the world have a hard time existing in self-love, because a lot of the things in the narratives are about self-destruction. And so when we can contribute this self-love, this sovereignty, which is an eternalness, then these things that we're doing to prove and toward to end our eternalness start to fade away and start to have less power over our lives, and we start to create our own narratives. So that was a little bit less of a cosmic report and more of a cosmic pep talk. It's going to be okay. The stars are working in your favor as long as you claim your sovereignty and work with them and not be driven by them. So it's a slight little different take on the cosmic star report this week. I hope that hit you someplace deep within so that you can find that balance. Get outside, get some exercise, use that energy starting tomorrow, Thursday, the 11th, and then into next week. And I will see you here next week. I'm sure you're going to have made some great strides. Many blessings.